My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 32 years old. I ended a 2-year relationship in less than 15 minutes. Not because I'm cold, not because I didn't love him, but because by the time the breakup actually happened, something inside me had already gone still. The longest part, honestly, was waiting for him to put his shoes on and realize I wasn't changing my mind. I've had the same core friend group since high school. 4 women, 15 years. We met at 17, survived ugly hair eras, cheap fast food, bad apartments, worse relationships, and one road trip none of us should have taken without roadside assistance. These were not casual friends. These were my people. The kind who knew what my silence meant. The kind who could hear one, "I'm fine," and no, I absolutely was not. We had a standing Thursday night ritual. Years ago, it was drinks and karaoke and pretending we had endless energy. Now it was mostly takeout on somebody's couch, half watching a show while complaining about work, life, and whoever was making terrible choices that week. We were older now, softer in some ways, sharper in others, but the rhythm of us never really changed. When my boyfriend moved in 8 months ago, I thought it was a good sign that he fit so easily into my life. At first, he played the role perfectly. He smiled at my friends, asked questions, remembered details. He sat with us on Thursdays sometimes, laughing at the right moments, acting amused when our conversations spiraled into old stories that needed no context because we had all lived them together. Once, he even made homemade dip, and my friends loved it. I remember standing in the kitchen that night thinking, this could work. This could really work. That was before the comments started. They came softly at first. So softly, I almost admired how harmless they sounded. Do you ever feel like you've outgrown them? Is it just me, or are your friends kind of stuck in the past? It's cute that you all still do this every week, but don't you think it's a little much? Cute. A little much. Nothing sharp enough to start a fight. Just small enough to sit under my skin. I brushed it off in the beginning. I told myself he was adjusting, that living together meant compromise, that not everyone understood long friendships unless they had them. But then the comments got more specific. He didn't like that my best friend Mia called late sometimes after a brutal shift at the hospital. He didn't like that Rachel sent voice notes at midnight when she was angry at the world and needed someone to laugh with her. He hated that our group chat never really slept. And he especially hated what he called our audience. That was his phrase. Every time your phone lights up, it feels like your audience is waiting, he said one night while I was answering a text. It's like I never fully get you to myself. I remember laughing a little because it sounded dramatic. He didn't laugh back. So I started making adjustments. I muted the group chat after dinner. I put my phone face down when we watched TV. I skipped one Thursday, then another. Each concession seemed small when I made it. Reasonable. Mature, even. That's how these things work, I think. Nobody hands you a prison all at once. They hand you one brick and make it sound like love. 3 weeks ago, Mia showed up at my office. I was walking out to the parking lot when I heard someone call my name, and there she was beside her car, face tight with worry. "Lauren," she said, hurrying toward me. "Oh my God, are you okay?" I stared at her. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" She looked at me like I'd missed the point entirely. "Because none of us have heard from you in almost 3 weeks." I actually laughed, confused. "What are you talking about? We texted." "No," she said. "We didn't. I called you. Rachel called you. Tessa texted. Nicole texted. I drove here because we thought something happened to you." I took out my phone right there in the parking lot, already preparing to prove she was wrong. Then my stomach dropped. Her thread was gone. Not buried, gone. I checked Rachel's messages. Gone. Nicole, gone. Tessa, gone. Then I opened my blocked contacts. All 4 names were there. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I just stood there under the ugly gray light of the parking lot, holding my phone like it belonged to a stranger. "How long?" I asked. Mia's expression changed. Softer now. Sadder. "Almost 3 weeks." 3 weeks. 3 weeks of my closest friends trying to reach me while I moved through my own life, believing they had gone quiet. 3 weeks of dinners and dishes and television beside a man who knew exactly what he had done. I drove home in a trance. He was on the couch when I walked in, one arm draped across the cushion, watching some cooking competition like it was the most ordinary Tuesday in the world. A glass of wine sat on the table beside him. His shoes were kicked off. He looked comfortable. That part still gets me. How comfortable he looked. "Hey," he said, not even glancing away from the screen. "You're home early." I set my bag down slowly. "Can I see your phone for a second?" That got his attention. He turned his head and frowned. "Why?" "I just want to check something." His eyes narrowed. "That's weird, Lauren." "Is it?" Yes, so no. I nodded once, calmly, too calmly. Then I asked, can you explain why all 4 of my closest friends are blocked on my phone and our message histories are deleted? The room changed. Not dramatically. He didn't jump, didn't panic, didn't act surprised. He just muted the television and looked at me with a kind of steady patience that made my skin crawl. And then he said, your friends are dragging you down. I blocked them for your own good. For your own good. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to realize what he had admitted. But he kept going. They keep you stuck, he said. Every week it's the same thing. Same people, same conversations, same old version of you. You need room to grow, Lauren. I'm trying to help you become better. Better! As if love gave him editing rights over my life. I should have screamed. I think a different version of me would have. Instead, everything in me went cold and clear. Because somewhere between dragging you down and for your own good, I stopped seeing him as the man I lived with, and started seeing him as someone who had been quietly rearranging my world while smiling in my face. He leaned forward like he expected me to understand. I finally said very softly, you did all of that without telling me? You would have overreacted. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, no, I think this is actually the first time I'm reacting exactly the right amount. He blinked at me like he genuinely didn't know what I meant. That was the part that chilled me most. Not the arrogance, not even the violation. It was the calm certainty, the absolute conviction that if he believed he was right, then what he did wasn't wrong. You're upset now, he said, standing slowly, but in a few weeks you'll see this was necessary. Necessary? I almost laughed. Instead, I looked at him and felt something strange settle over me. Not rage. Rage would have been warmer. This was colder than that. Cleaner. Like my heart had finally stepped back from the fire and could suddenly see the whole room. You went through my phone, I said. You blocked my closest friends. You deleted years of conversations. And then you sat here for 3 weeks pretending nothing had happened. He exhaled through his nose, already irritated that I was making this difficult. I was trying to protect what we have. No, I said. You were trying to control what I had. His jaw tightened. You always do this, he said. You turn everything into some accusation instead of listening. I'm telling you your friends are unhealthy. They keep you emotionally stunted. They encourage you to stay in the same patterns, the same routines, the same... Stop, he did. Maybe because of my tone. Maybe because for the first time since I'd known him, I wasn't trying to keep the peace. I looked around the apartment, the lamp I had picked, the blanket folded over the chair, the framed print above the console table we'd argued over at the store for 20 minutes before agreeing on. Ordinary things, harmless things. And suddenly every object in that room felt like evidence that I had mistaken proximity for safety. You need to leave, I said. His face changed instantly. What? You need to pack a bag and leave tonight. He stared at me. Then a small, disbelieving smile touched his mouth. You're not serious. I walked past him, straight to the bedroom closet. On the top shelf was a storage bin with winter scarves and sweaters. I dragged it down, set it on the bed, and started emptying it. Behind me, I heard his footsteps. Lauren. I didn't answer. Lauren, don't be ridiculous. I turned and met his eyes. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being done. That landed. The smile vanished. In its place came something sharper. Panic, maybe, though he tried to dress it up as offense. All of this over 4 blocked numbers? No, I said evenly. Over what it means that you thought you had the right. He started talking faster then, as if speed could win this for him. I was trying to help you. You've been different for months. Distracted. Pulled in 10 directions. They call you at all hours. They dump their problems on you. And you act like being constantly available is some kind of loyalty. It's not healthy. I folded one of his shirts and set it in the box. He stared at me like the act itself was obscene. You are seriously packing my things? Yes. This is insane. What's insane, I said, lifting my gaze to his, is deleting years of my life off my phone and expecting gratitude. His voice rose. I said I was doing it for us. I zipped a toiletry bag and dropped it into the box. There is no US after this. For a second, the room went quiet. Then, right on cue, his expression shattered. The tears came fast, too fast. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. If I hadn't lived the last 3 weeks, I might have crumbled. I might have gone to him. I might have started comforting the man who had just confessed to isolating me. But once you see the pattern, something breaks. Not your heart exactly, your blindness. Lauren, he said, voice cracking, please don't do this. I kept packing. You're really throwing away 2 years because I made one mistake? I stopped just long enough to answer. This wasn't one mistake, it was a campaign. His head snapped up at that. A campaign? He repeated. Wow. Yes, I said. A deliberate, repeated effort to cut me off from the people who love me and make me easier to manage. That is exactly what it was. He stood, angry now, because the tears weren't working fast enough. You are being dramatic. I looked at him with a calm that seemed to enrage him more than shouting would have. And you are leaving. For the next 40 minutes, the apartment became a theater neither of us wanted tickets to. He followed me from room to room, alternating between wounded and furious. One minute he was telling me I was making a terrible mistake. The next he was accusing my friends of poisoning me against him. Then he circled back to saying he loved me, that he only wanted what was best, that I was too emotional to understand what he'd done. I handed him the box when I was finished. He didn't take it, so I set it by the front door. Call someone, I said. Your sister, your mom, whoever you want, but you're not staying here tonight. He laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You're seriously choosing them over me. I leaned against the wall and crossed my arms. No, I said, I'm choosing me over this. That line hit him harder than anything else had. Because up until that moment, I think he still believed the story could be pulled back into his shape. That if he said the right thing, cried at the right time, made me feel just guilty enough, I would reopen the door he'd spent months narrowing. Instead, I stood there and watched him call his sister. She arrived 40 minutes later in a cloud of perfume and indignation. The second I opened the door, I could tell exactly what version of events she'd been given. She looked at me like I had dragged him into the street by the collar. He stood behind her with red eyes and wounded silence, letting the image do its work. She looked from the box to me and said, "Seriously?" I didn't answer. She stepped inside, just enough to make it clear she considered herself invited. Do you really think this is appropriate? What I think, I said, is that your brother went through my phone, blocked my closest friends without my knowledge, deleted years of conversations, and hid it from me for weeks. Something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe, but it vanished quickly. He was trying to help you, she said. Of course, he had already used that line on someone else. I nodded once. Then the family script is stronger than I thought. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I bent down, picked up the box, and held it out to him. This is what's leaving with you tonight. The rest can be picked up this weekend. He took the box this time, but barely, like accepting it made everything too real. At the door, he turned back to me, waiting. I could feel it, waiting for hesitation, waiting for softness, waiting for some final crack in my resolve that he could press a thumb into and widen. He got nothing. His sister gave me one last disgusted look as she guided him out. The door shut, and the silence afterward was so complete it almost rang. I stood there for a long time with my hands still on the lock. I wish I could tell you I felt triumphant. I didn't. I felt hollow, shaky, sick. I went to the couch and sat in the exact spot where he'd been sitting when I walked in. The wineglass was still there on the table. The television screen had gone dark. There was a throw pillow pushed crooked in the corner from where he'd leaned against it, perfectly at ease while my life sat altered inside my own phone. That was when I cried. Not over him, over the message threads, over the years, over every joke, every voice memo, every call me when you can, every tiny digital breadcrumb that said these people had been with me through real life. I knew I could rebuild contact. I knew the friendships themselves were still there, but something had still been taken, and grief doesn't need total ruin to feel real. I wiped my face, picked up my phone, and unblocked the first number. Mia answered on the second ring. Lauren? Her voice alone nearly broke me again. I'm here, I said. There was a pause, then the softness only old friends know how to use. What happened? So I told her. Not every detail at first, just enough. The blocked numbers, the deleted messages, the confrontation, the fact that he was gone. She was quiet for a second when I finished. Then she said, I'm coming over. You don't have to. I know, she said. I'm still coming. That was the thing about real friendship. No speeches, no conditions, no scorekeeping, just arrival. By the time she got there, I had already called Rachel and Nicole. Tessa called me back before I could even finish leaving a voicemail. The story passed between them in stunned fragments. He did what? He deleted everything? Are you alone right now? Nobody said I told you so. Nobody made me feel stupid. And somehow that kindness hurt almost as much as the betrayal, because it showed me how badly I had underestimated the people who had always loved me best. Saturday morning came too fast. I spent an hour going through the apartment, gathering the rest of his things into 3 neat boxes. Clothes, books, cables, shoes he had somehow managed to leave under every chair in the place. I packed carefully, which annoyed me in theory but soothed me in practice. Order felt good. Precision felt good. Bubble wrap felt good. I even wrapped the framed photo of his niece that he kept on the bookshelf, because I may be ruthless in a breakup, but I'm not cruel to children who had nothing to do with it. At exactly 10:17, the doorbell rang. He was there, and so was his sister, again. I opened the door and stepped back just enough to let them in. His eyes went straight to the boxes. "You move fast," he said. I held his gaze. "You gave me a reason." His sister crossed her arms. "You know this is still completely out of proportion." I almost smiled, because there it was again. That insistence that the injury was mine to absorb, never theirs to answer for. He crouched near the boxes, rifling through them, with the careful irritation of someone looking for evidence. I stayed by the wall and watched. Then he looked up and asked, "Where's my watch?" I frowned. "Your silver one?" "Yes." It was in the second box. He opened the second box and started digging through it. Shirts, charger, toiletry bag, paperback. No watch. His sister looked at me immediately. He stood slowly. "Funny." "I packed it," I said. He gave a low, humorless laugh. "Of course you did." I knew I had packed it. I remembered setting it on top of a folded sweater. I remembered because I'd nearly put it in the wrong box and corrected myself. I took a step toward them, but his sister was already speaking. "This is exactly what I mean," she said. "You're trying to make him look crazy." I stopped, and in that moment, something cold slipped into place. Not panic. Recognition. The watch wasn't the point. The point was the scene. The accusation. The tiny performance built to make me look unstable in my own apartment. I looked from him to his sister and understood with absolute clarity that even now, even here, even while collecting his leftovers from my floor, he was still trying to control the story. I didn't argue. That surprised both of them. Instead, I stepped back, leaned against the wall, and said quietly, "Take whatever you need. I'm not fighting you over things." For a split second, something flickered across his face. Disappointment. Because conflict was useful to him. Conflict gave him material. Without it, the scene fell flat. They finished going through the boxes quickly after that. His sister stayed close, watching me like I might suddenly lunge for something, like I was the unpredictable one in this situation. When they were done, he picked up the boxes without looking at me. "Guess that's everything," he said. "Guess so." He hesitated at the door again, waiting, always waiting. I gave him nothing. They left. The second the door closed, I didn't move. I just stood there, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway, feeling that same strange mix of relief and exhaustion settle into my bones. Then, slowly, I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and let the silence expand again. It should have ended there. It didn't. Over the next few days, my phone started lighting up with names I barely recognized. People from his world. Co-workers. Friends of friends. Someone I'd met once at a birthday dinner. A woman from his book club who I'd spoken to for maybe 5 minutes about a novel I hadn't even finished. Every message followed the same pattern. "Hey, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" At first, I thought it was genuine concern. Then I read between the lines. Because concern usually doesn't arrive all at once, from multiple directions, carrying the exact same tone. This wasn't random. It was coordinated. Or at the very least, seated. I asked one of them gently, "What exactly did you hear?" There was a pause. Then the reply came. That you'd been distant for a while, and that you chose your friends over him. That when he tried to talk to you about it, you kicked him out without warning. I stared at the message for a long time, because it was almost true. That's what made it dangerous. Like standing across the street from a building and taking a picture. You can say you were there, but you're still missing everything inside. Yes, I had ended things. Yes, my friends were part of the story. But the part where he went into my phone erased years of connection and cut me off from my support system, gone. Removed. Edited out like it never happened. I didn't respond to most of the messages. I didn't want to live inside a he said, she said spiral. But when the woman from the book club followed up, "I just hope you didn't act too fast," something in me tightened. So I replied once. Calm, clear, controlled. "I appreciate you reaching out. Just for context, he went into my phone, blocked my closest friends without my knowledge, deleted our message history, and hid it for weeks. I ended the relationship because of that. I wish him well, but the version you heard is missing some important details." I sent it, and then I put my phone face down. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed again. His name, of course. "You're telling people my private business now?" I let out a slow breath before opening the message fully. The audacity almost made me laugh. My private business. I typed, deleted, typed again, then finally sent. You went into my phone and deleted my relationships. Those were my contacts, my conversations, my life. The only private thing here is the code you used to get in." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. "You're twisting this. I was trying to help you." There it was again. That same phrase, like a script he couldn't stop reading from. I didn't reply, because I was starting to understand something important. Arguing with someone like him doesn't lead to clarity. It leads to exhaustion. And exhaustion is where they win. So I set my phone down and walked away. For a couple of days, things went quiet, almost peaceful. I reconnected with my friends properly. Not just quick updates, but real conversations. Long ones. The kind that stretch late into the night without you noticing time passing. We didn't just talk about what happened. We talked about everything. Work, family, stupid things, important things. The ordinary rhythm I hadn't realized I'd been missing until it came back. And then, 4 days after the move out, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I'd been dodging his sister's calls all week. She had already left me 3 voicemails, each one more aggressive than the last, telling me I'd made a huge mistake, that I'd never find someone who tolerated my lifestyle. My lifestyle. Having friends. I stared at the screen for a second longer, then answered. "Hello?" A calm, professional voice responded. "Hi, is this Lauren Mitchell?" "Yes. My name is Dr. Evelyn Parker. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm calling because I work with your ex-boyfriend, and he asked me to reach out to you." I went very still. The room seemed to shrink slightly around me. "I'm sorry," I said. "He's been going through a difficult emotional period," she continued gently, "and I just wanted to check in. He hasn't been responding to some of my recent appointment confirmations, and I wanted to see if you had any insight into how he's doing." I didn't answer right away, because 3 separate thoughts hit me at the exact same time. First, he had told his therapist enough about me that she had my number. Second, he had stopped responding to his therapist. That part worried me. Despite everything, I didn't want him spiraling into something serious. But the third thought settled deeper than the other 2. He had asked her to call me. Not his sister. Not his mother. Me. I walked slowly to the window, staring out without really seeing anything. "I'm not in a position to speak on his current state," I said carefully. "We're no longer together." "Of course," she said kindly. "I understand. I just wanted to check if you'd had any recent contact." "I haven't," I said. "If you're concerned about his well-being, his family would probably be a better point of contact." There was a brief pause. "Thank you," she said. "I appreciate your time." The call ended, but I didn't move. I stood there, phone still in my hand, replaying the conversation over and over in my head, because something about it didn't sit right. Not the concern. The setup. He had my number. His sister had my number. His entire network had my number. If he wanted to reach me, he could have. If he needed help, there were closer people. But instead, he asked his therapist to call me, to ask if he was okay, to plant that question in my mind. I closed my eyes slowly, and that's when it clicked. This wasn't about help. It was about leverage, about creating just enough concern to make me wonder, just enough guilt to make me hesitate, just enough emotional pull to reopen a door I had already closed. Because if I started thinking, what if he's not okay? If I started feeling responsible, then maybe I'd reach out. Maybe I'd check on him. Maybe I'd step back into the orbit he had been trying to trap me in. I exhaled slowly. "No," I whispered to the empty room. "Not happening." But the thought lingered anyway, because the most dangerous manipulations aren't loud. They're quiet, reasonable, almost kind. And if you're not careful, they don't feel like traps. They feel like concern. I set my phone down on the table. And for the first time since the breakup, I realized something that made my stomach turn. This wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't reach out. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even when the quiet stretched a little too long and my brain tried to fill it with questions that didn't belong to me anymore. I stayed still. And in that stillness, something sharpened. Because once you stop reacting, you start seeing. 3 days later, Mia called me. Not her usual casual tone. Not a, "What are you doing tonight?" kind of call. "Hey," she said, quieter than normal. "Can I ask you something without you getting weird about it?" I sat down slowly. "That depends on the question." She exhaled. "Has he done anything like this before?" The question landed heavier than I expected. "I don't know," I said honestly. There was a pause on the line. "Because it feels practiced," she said. "Practiced." The word echoed in my chest. And once it was there, it wouldn't leave. That night, I did something I hadn't planned to do. Something I probably should have done earlier. I reached out to his ex-girlfriend. Her name was Hannah. We had met once, briefly, at a mutual friend's party about a year ago. I remembered her because she had that quiet, observant kind of energy, the the kind of person who doesn't speak much, but when they do, you listen. It took me longer than I want to admit to find her number. When I finally pressed call, my hand hesitated for half a second. Then I let it ring. She answered on the third tone. Hello? Hi, Hannah. This is Lauren Mitchell. A small pause. Oh, hi. I'm sorry to call you out of nowhere, I said. I know this is a little strange. I wanted to ask you something, and you're the only person who might understand what I'm talking about. Her voice shifted slightly, more alert now. Okay. I took a breath. Did he ever try to isolate you from your friends? Silence. Not confused silence. Recognizing silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Yeah, she said. Just that. Yeah. My chest tightened. Did it start small? I asked. Like comments about how your friends weren't good for you or how they were holding you back? Exactly like that, she said almost immediately. I closed my eyes. And then, did he ever go through your phone? I asked. Or interfere with your messages? There was a longer pause this time. Then she said, he didn't block people, but he used to delete messages. My eyes snapped open. What? He'd go into my phone when I wasn't around, she said. Delete texts from my friends. Sometimes entire conversations. Then, when I didn't respond, my friends would think I was ignoring them. And when I asked why they stopped reaching out, he'd tell me maybe they just weren't that close to me anymore. The room felt colder. He made me question everything, she continued. I thought I was losing people. I thought something was wrong with me. My grip tightened on the phone. That's exactly what happened to me, I said quietly. Another pause. Then she asked softly, did he tell you it was for your own good? The words hit like a punch. Yes. She let out a breath that sounded like something releasing after being held too long. He said that to me too, she said, word for word. We both went quiet, because in that moment, it stopped being a coincidence and became a pattern. There's more, she said after a second. Of course there was. He used therapy too. I leaned forward slightly. What do you mean? After we broke up, she said, he went quiet, completely. And then a few days later, his therapist reached out to me, said he wasn't doing well, asked if I had heard from him. My stomach dropped. Same thing, I whispered. Yeah, she said. I thought it meant he was in a really bad place. I felt guilty, responsible even. So I went back. I swallowed. For how long? 2 months, she said, before I realized nothing had actually changed. He just found a new way to pull me back in. I pressed my hand against my forehead. Everything was lining up. Every move, every word, every carefully placed moment that felt spontaneous but wasn't. He's not chaotic, Hannah said quietly. That's what makes it hard to see. He's deliberate. Deliberate. The words settled into place beside practiced, like pieces of a puzzle finally locking together. Thank you, I said after a moment. Seriously, I know this wasn't an easy call. She gave a small, almost sad laugh. No, she said, but I'm glad you figured it out faster than I did. We said goodbye after that. I sat there for a long time with my phone in my lap, staring at nothing. Because everything felt different now. Before, it had felt personal. Like something about me had triggered all of this. Like maybe I had missed signs, or made the wrong choices, or stayed too long. But now it felt structured. Like I had stepped into a story that had already been written. Different details, same script. And for the first time since the breakup, I didn't feel confused. I felt clear. That night, I opened my laptop, and I started writing. Not a journal entry, not a rant, a record. Dates, events, what happened, how I found out, what was said, the blocked numbers, the deleted messages, the confrontation, the move out, the missing watch incident, the therapist call, the conversation with Hannah. Everything. Clean, factual, precise. No emotion, just truth. When I finished, I read it once. Then I printed 2 copies. One went into a folder I slid into the back of my filing cabinet. The other, I handed to Mia the next day. She looked at it, confused. What is this? A timeline, I said, just in case. In case of what? I held her gaze. In case the story changes. She didn't smile. She didn't joke. She just nodded slowly and said, got it. That was the thing about having people who really know you. You don't have to explain the part that sounds paranoid. They understand the part that sounds necessary. The next step was simpler. I opened my email and typed out a message. Short, polite, firm. To his therapist. I didn't mention anything personal. Didn't accuse. Didn't explain the relationship. I just wrote, I want to clarify that I am no longer in contact with your client and do not wish to be contacted regarding his well-being. Please remove my number from your records. If there are concerns, his family members are better points of contact. I read it twice, then sent it. Boundary set. Clean. Final. And then I did the most important thing. I called my friends. Not as a group, individually, one by one. Because rebuilding something real deserves more than a group chat. Mia first, then Rachel, then Nicole, then Tessa. Each call started the same way. I'm sorry. Not for the breakup, not for him, for the weeks before, for the silence, for the way I had slowly stepped back without understanding why, for letting someone convince me, gradually, quietly, that the people who had stood beside me for 15 years were somehow the problem. Every single one of them said the same thing in different words. We're still here. No anger. No scorekeeping. Just presence. And something inside me, something that had been tight for weeks, finally loosened. Later that night, I sat alone in my apartment. No TV. No noise. Just the soft hum of everything being exactly where it should be. My phone buzzed once on the table. A message. Unknown number. I opened it. You didn't have to go this far. I stared at the screen. Didn't have to go this far. For a second, I almost responded. Almost explained. Almost defended. Then I stopped. Because that was the old instinct. The one that needed to justify itself to someone who had never played fair. I locked my phone, set it down, and let the silence answer for me. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't part of the story anymore. I was outside it, and I intended to stay there. The email from the therapist came the next morning. Short, professional, clean. She acknowledged my request, confirmed my number had been removed, and wished me well. That was it. No questions, no pushback, no lingering thread. Just done. I read it once, then archived it. One more door closed. A week passed, then another. And slowly the noise around everything started to settle. Not disappear, just lose its grip. I stopped checking my phone every hour. Stopped replaying conversations in my head. Stopped wondering what version of me was being discussed in rooms I wasn't in. Because that's the trap, isn't it? Not just what someone does to you, but the version of you they leave behind in your own mind. The one that keeps asking, did I overreact? Was I too harsh? Could I have handled it differently? I had those thoughts. Of course I did. Then one night, I played something back that cut straight through all of them. A voicemail. His sister. Her voice sharp, certain, unapologetic. You're a deeply selfish person. My brother gave you everything, and you threw him away because your little friends matter more. He's devastated. I hope you're happy with your pathetic little group because that's all you're going to have. I listened to it once, then again. And instead of making me doubt myself, it anchored me. Because in that message was everything I needed to remember. Not about me, about them. A world where love means isolation, where loyalty means obedience, where having people outside the relationship is seen as betrayal. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a belief system, and I had walked away from it. The rest of it resolved quietly. No dramatic confrontation, no public unraveling. Just gravity doing its work. His version of the story kept circulating, but so did the questions. Because when people compare notes, inconsistencies start to show. A woman I'd never met messaged me on Instagram one afternoon. Hey, I don't want to get involved, but I heard what he said. And then I heard something different from someone else. I hope you're okay. I looked at the message for a while. Then I replied, I am. If you're curious about what actually happened, I'd encourage you to ask him directly about my phone. That was it. No explanation. No screenshots. No defense. Just a redirect toward the one place the truth couldn't be edited without effort. From what I heard later, through the quiet, indirect channels, information travels, people did ask. And he didn't handle it well. Deflection. Irritation. Turning the question back on them. And when someone answers a simple question with hostility, that tells you everything. There was one message I didn't expect. His mother. It came in the middle of the afternoon. I've heard a little about what happened. I don't know all the details, and I don't think it's my place to take sides. But I wanted to say, I think you're a good person. I'm sorry things ended this way. I read it twice. Then I typed back, thank you. I appreciate that more than you know. I hope he's okay. And I meant it. That was the strange part. I didn't hate him. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just distance. The kind that lets you see someone clearly without needing to be near them. Some people don't mean to harm you in obvious ways. They just believe something about love that quietly destroys everything around it. And if you stay long enough, you start believing it too. Thursday night came again. For the first time in over a month, I went. Mia's place. Same couch, same uneven coffee table, same chipped bowl that had somehow survived 15 years of use. Rachel brought takeout. Nicole complained about her boss within 5 minutes of sitting down. Tessa was already halfway through a story before I even finished taking off my shoes. Nothing had changed. And somehow, everything had. At one point, I looked around the room and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not excitement. Not relief, just normal, simple, steady, uncomplicated. The kind of normal you don't notice until it's taken from you. We stayed too late, laughed too loud, argued about something completely meaningless. And when I finally got home, it was close to midnight. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and paused. The apartment was quiet, but not empty. Not anymore. I set my keys down, leaned against the counter, and let the stillness settle around me. For a moment, I caught myself reaching for my phone. That old reflex. Expecting a message, a name, a presence that had become routine. I stopped halfway, lowered my hand, and let it pass. Because some habits don't disappear overnight, but they do fade, if you let them. I walked over to the couch and sat down, the same place everything had started. The same place I had realized something was wrong. The same place I had chosen to, it. Only now, it felt different, lighter, like the air had changed. I picked up my phone and opened a new message. Mia, made it home. Thank you for tonight. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Always, Thursday forever. I smiled, set the phone down, and leaned back. Because if there was one thing I understood now, with absolute clarity, it was this. It doesn't start with someone taking your world away. It starts with them convincing you that you don't need it, that the people who know you best are somehow the problem, that love should feel smaller, quieter, more controlled. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're already alone enough that leaving feels impossible. But it's not. It never is. Your life doesn't collapse when you walk away from the wrong person. It expands, back into the space that was always yours. And sometimes the clearest sign that you made the right decision is how normal everything feels once they're gone.